What's up, everybody, and welcome to an extremely belated part of my 10,000 subscribers special! No, please, hold back your applause. As I address to my top 8 favorite game consoles, I have a lot of love for the Game Boy line. Go check that video out, by the way, because this one is kind of a sequel to it. But long story short, I owned and played these handhelds regularly for almost half the time I've been alive. Recess at school? Bust out the Game Boy. Family vacation? Bust out the Game Boy. Just feeling like playing some Game Boy? Bust out... Oh. My batteries died. Huh. Alright, I'll be the first to admit these consoles were not perfect. They ran on AA's, which you would always be out of for some ungodly reason, and you needed an illuminated microscope just to see the screen. But despite that, they're still important to me. So why not talk about my favorite games from them? And yes, I do mean all of them. Game Boy, Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Advance games all qualify for this list, because thanks to Nintendo's commitment to backwards compatibility, they all fit neatly into one long era of my life. Just don't be surprised if you don't see your personal favorite on here. I lived a, shall we say, sheltered childhood, meaning I missed out on some of the biggest and most fondly remembered games out there. Or I just didn't like them as much as you did, 'cause, you know, we're not the same person. Savvy? So hey, I'm Whatthefnu, and this is my top 8 favorite Game Boy series games. Number 8. Am I the only person on Earth who owned a Game Boy camera? Seriously, not a single person I've talked to even knew this existed, let alone mentioned it in a YouTube video. The reasons for that may seem obvious, but this is a personal list, and I have a personal reason for citing it as one of my favorite titles. Because I've rarely played anything that has the sheer number of secrets, Easter eggs, and clever little tidbits that the Game Boy camera does. There are so many details to discover in every nook and cranny of this cartridge, to the point where every time I booted it up, it felt like I was going to find something new. Like how if you play the racing game and win, if you start mashing the A button instead of backing out, you can raise up the flag on the side and get a crown. If you just let the initial enemies fly away during the play portion, it goes into a shmup game, and if you survive until the 3rd round, it uses your custom pictures for the boss. And if you beat both those challenges, it changes the credit sequence and... oh yeah, the credit sequence! You have to put yourself in my shoes for this. I'm presented with a menu every time I boot this game up, so logically, why would I ever press a button other than A? And then one day, my hand must have slipped, or I wasn't paying attention or something, and then... What is happening? Where am I? How did I get to space? And just like that, boom, I found a secret for the first time in my gaming career. Granted, it wasn't a very good secret, but I felt so accomplished and clever as a kid. It drove me back to this thing time and again to keep discovering what it had to offer. Oh, and let's not forget that this was my first digital camera, allowing me to instantly take pictures and see how they turned out, rather than wait for the roll of film to develop. Yes, I am in fact that old. So old that this album has pictures I totally forgot I took. Pictures of my grandmother, and what is possibly the only 2 pictures in the world of my Cocker Spaniel Maisie. All these years later, and I still found something I wasn't expecting. That is what makes me love the Game Boy camera. Number 7! As I said before, I was not exactly wise to the ways of the world as a kid. I read things like Nintendo Power, but for the most part, until I was 13 or so, I just trusted my parents' judgment when it came to video games. I didn't even know there was a company named Sega making games before the GameCube came out, and yes, that means my first Sonic game was Adventure 2. Because of this, I just can't go back to the older games. They don't feel right. They lack that something that keeps me hooked and interested. That something being a childhood attachment. But shed no tears for me, because I'm not a total lost cause. And thanks to the unique functions of the Chow Garden in Sonic Adventure 2, I've played some classic-style Sonic games that I really love. All of the Sonic Advance games are great, but by my measurements, 2 was the best. Best music, best sense of speed, best level and enemy design, and by far the best game feel. This was the game that made me understand Sonic, the first platformer that actively pushed me to learn the levels jump by jump, obstacle by obstacle, because when you get this game right, you practically fly through it, and not just in the literal sense. Though don't get me wrong, I did plenty of that as well once I discovered my favorite character. Now you may argue Cream is overpowered, seeing as how she has a homing attack and can cheat her way back up to paths you missed, but that's kinda the point for me. Playing as Cream in Sonic Advance 2 is one of my absolute favorite ways to do nothing. To let my brain go on autopilot and just kind of flow. Yeah, I eventually got the Chaos Emeralds and unlocked Amy and all that jazz, but that was a brief pip in a long career of saving this girl's mom over and over and over again. It's a lot like Dust Force in some ways. It inspired me to want to get better at it, because once I did get better, making the levels feel sublime became brainless, and I had a game that I could jump into and have a good time whenever. This is the face of comfort gaming for me. There are very few things that can match up. Number 6! Hopping from no emotion to all the emotions, Kirby's Block Ball is the game I bust out when I want to feel really, really happy. I think some of the genius of the Kirby series is that they're cutesy and adorable on the outside, but once you start looking a little closer, you notice something dark living below the surface. It's a trick as old as writing itself. You have to get people to care about the actors involved in your story, so that when heavy things start happening to them, they actually resonate with the audience. And there are several ways to do this. You can make those characters funny, charming, aesthetically pleasing, or just all of the above. But Kirby's Block Ball doesn't worry about the dark parts. It's all joy, and while that does potentially hamper it from telling a good story, come on, it's Kirby playing pinball. Pardon me if I wasn't expecting George Orwell out of this. That title theme hits me in just the right spot. It brings back so many good memories of time blissfully wasted away without a care in the world. It takes me to a simpler, safer place where nothing mattered except how I was gonna beat the borderline scores for every stage, where I was the world champion at air hockey and could beat bosses with the best of them. A time where I held every #1 spot on the high score tables, and played stages again and again just so I could get more of the music. This is pretty much my childhood here, and the only thing that keeps it from being higher is that when I go back to it now, yeah, the game is kind of a pain. I don't like how little control pinball gives you in the first place, but then you start throwing these bubble-based bonus rounds in that are essential to high scores, and it just becomes an effort and frustration. But no matter how bad I'm losing, I just can't bring myself to hate this game. It's too bright, it's too cheery, and it's got too strong of a hold on my heart. I tell you, man, nostalgia's a heck of a drug. Number 5!
That's impossible.
Look, I have made my opinions on Pokemon incredibly clear by now. I loved this series back in the day, up until I realized I'd paid over $200 for the same game over and over. That's actually why I'm looking forward to Sun and Moon when Gens 5 and 6 just weren't doing it for me. Everybody's hating on Clown Boy over here and how yours is the executor that will pierce the heavens, but it's because these games are breaking the mold that I feel like I can go into this one and genuinely not know what to expect. And Pokemon Ruby was the same way. So many firsts happened for me in this generation. First time I felt like I was being challenged by the difficulty. First time I had gone back to a game for events that changed based on the real world clock. And the first time I had gotten a legendary Pokemon you couldn't catch in the game normally. I had heard the legends of creatures like Mew and Celebi, but it wasn't until Jirachi was released that I could call one of these elusive creatures my own. And I wish I had footage to show you of the guy, but in a fit of what can only be described as utter stupidity, I erased my old file a few years back. I was heartbroken when I realized what I'd done, and I'm still not sure if I've 100% forgiven myself. But even without Jirachi, I love the innovation here. I love the weather effects, I love the creative locales, I loved the slew of new items and moves to play with, I love the contests and how they made me think about raising my Pokemon in a totally different way than what I was used to. I even loved filling up my bag with Ash so that I could buy those exclusive items from that one guy. So many hours spent in that one part of the game. Ruby was the breath of fresh air I needed to keep my interest in the franchise going. Well, for at least a little longer. And as long as we're on the subject, let me just get this out of the way so I never have to make an actual countdown about it. My top 8 favorite Pokemon, organized with a little help from what I call their huggability rating. Number 8, Slugma. It's practically made of fire. As a Pyro, I approve. Huggability rating, 0. Number 7, Gardevoir. And yes, it's exactly for the reasons you think. And why not raise one? Psychics dominate the early game in Gen 3, and they only get stronger as you go. Huggability rating, 8. If it weren't for certain impediments. Number 6, Noctowl. Owls are awesome. We've been over this already. Huggability rating, 4. Number 5, Honchkrow. Crows are awesome. We've been over this already. Plus, Honchkrow looks like he knows what's up. If you've got a problem with something, this guy will solve it for you. You won't know how, but he'll solve it. Huggability rating, 6 on the day of his daughter's wedding. Number 4, Ariados. What can I say? It's just a really cool looking spider. The kind of thing you're proud to have on your team. Huggability rating? Do webs count? Number 3, Goodra. I don't care if that slime never comes out. I want to ride piggyback on this thing and go on a magical journey to the Marshmallow Cloud Kingdom. Huggability rating, Tide Ultra. Number 2, Pangoro. Now this is a Pokemon made for battle. If I ever got in a fight in some back alley, this is the one creature I'd want to have my back. Huggability rating, 0. And I wouldn't have it any other way. And finally, number 1, Illumise, because oh my god, she's adorable! Illumise is one of the few things I will openly fanboy about, to the point where I'm putting up a $50 bounty for the first person to make me a really high quality plushie of her. Huggability rating? Dude, it's like a Mobius strip. And of course I consider Jirachi, but that thing's a legendary that you can't even obtain in the game normally. The first of that kind I ever got. It's on a totally different tier. Pokemon Ruby is probably my favorite game in the series, to the point where it's one of the posters I have in the back of my FNU's forum videos. So let's just say that, for me at least, if Gen 7 really, truly, earnestly wants to shake things up, it's got some pretty big shoes to fill.
Number 4!
This isn't the first time I've talked about this game, and chances are it won't be the last. What did I say in my top 8 Wario games? That this was one of the best platformers ever made? Yeah, that opinion hasn't changed. I also still think it's the work of strange mad geniuses that should be paid far, far more than they currently are. How do you compliment the game that does everything? Do I want to talk about how the music is immediately identifiable and flawlessly sets the mood for every area? Do I want to write a whole paragraph on how this is one of the most well-animated and vibrant games on the GBA? Do I want to talk about the slick level design and how it's constantly challenging and surprising? I could, but due to the nature of this list, I think my time would be better spent explaining my personal favorite part of Wario Land 4, the tone. Perhaps unintentionally, Wario is a character custom built for comic relief. He and Waluigi are usually the ones taking it in the shorts, but not in this game. He's still the greedy, stupid, strong goofball we all love, but here, he has a rare chance to also be awesome for a while. And as someone who claims Wario to be their favorite Nintendo character, that's pretty cool. I mean, what's more awesome than jumping headfirst into dangerous ancient ruins looking for treasure and then shoulder checking everything that tries to stand in your way? And they could have stopped there. They could have called it a day at that, and I would have been perfectly happy. But on top of this being a bulletproof premise, these stone walls have their own story to tell. What's this thing, and why is it running a shop where you can buy a dragon? What's with these bonus rooms scattered in every world? Why are they so important that they have their own music, and why is this guy almost always there? And then I beat the game, and it all started making sense. If you know me, you know that I'm a fan of the little details, and games like this are why, because I know I'll be rewarded if I take the time and energy to look for them. There is a genuinely magical feeling to this world, like something amazing is always just around the corner waiting for you, even if you already know what it is. It's an adventure, a right and proper adventure, with crazy characters, behemoth bosses, and tons of treasure. And it's one that I never get tired of going on.
Number 3.
Did you know Game Freak makes things other than Pokemon? Yeah, I'll give you a second to go grab your socks that just got blown off. But all joking aside, any company that's been in business as long as Game Freak has is bound to know what they're doing by now. But man, even as a kid, I was not prepared for their other endeavors to be this good. Drill Dozer is pretty much my go-to standard for what a platformer should do. Take one really good gameplay concept and just roll with it. You'd be amazed with just how many applications sticking a drill on the front of your mech suit can do, how many different situations that one tool is useful, and how much skill it takes to use it at the highest level. The system of having to regain your gears in every area is just brilliant. It makes every stage feel like a tiny little Metroid game. You make mental notes of obstacles you can't pass, and because the power-up process is so short, chances are you won't forget where they are, and then get the satisfaction of coming back later to blow them to smithereens. This is even emphasized by how the music changes when you get that third gear, signifying that things are about to get good. This all happens in the span of about 15 minutes, over 20 times over the course of the game, and it never, ever gets old. Drill Dozer is a constant barrage of dopamine triggers. Whether it's for the long run or the short run, I always feel like I'm doing something significant. And man, this game has a good soundtrack. I haven't played nearly enough of the GBA library to say if it's truly one of the greats, but it's the best one I've ever heard. It's smooth, it's stylish, it's rockin' in a beat. It's exactly the kind of music I want to hear when I'm doing this kind of thing. And no, I am not surprised in the slightest, considering it's the same composer who made the Champion Lance theme. This game just works. Everything about it complements every other element. The kooky cast matches the unique gameplay, which is accented beautifully by the high-energy soundtrack, which goes great with the fast-paced action, which is progressively made more awesome by the collection and upgrade mechanics, which match the theming of the story. And now we've just come full circle. Oh, and the main character is adorable. Yeah. Well, her sprite is adorable, anyway. Bro, you gotta trim those eyebrows.
Number 2.
You wanna know how I know I'm getting old? The sole reason I love Super Mario Land 2 is for the same reasons I love Sonic Advance 2. At this point, playing it is practically effortless. Because sometimes you're not looking for a tremendous challenge that'll push your reflexes and make you earn the credits. SML2 will do that for sure if you're new to it, but I've played it so many times at this point that I know every level inside out and backwards. I know all the shortcuts and bonus stage locations. I've memorized how and where to get certain power-ups so that I can just easy mode through certain stages with a rabbit cap. But I choose to play through them normally anyway because, well, it's more fun. I have a set route to get myself 990 coins just before I tackle Wario's castle so that I can hit up the slots and stock up on a ridiculous number of lives in preparation. I don't know, it just feels right. And the best part? A full playthrough, even if you're going for everything, barely lasts an hour and a half. I can pick up Super Mario Land 2 anytime, anywhere, at any point in the game, and still have a good time. Playing it is almost like a second language to me at this point. It's comfortable, familiar, and I enjoy doing it. I enjoy the creative level designs and the wacko enemies that never showed up in other games. I enjoy the power-ups and how they're all useful in different situations. And I love just breaking the bosses. Yep, I can one-cycle Tatanga, and the bird, and Wario on a good day. Oh yeah, Wario's in this game. Look at that.
Who throws a shoe? Honestly.
I don't know what else to say. Anybody who grew up as a Nintendo kid can probably point to a Mario game they call their favorite. And this is most definitely mine.
It's number 1.
I'm just going to say this right now, there is no justifiable reason I should like this game more than the Oracle series. None. They're bigger games, they're more polished games, they broke new ground with the password system and all the secrets that let you unlock new features if you had both cartridges. So why is this game on there and not those? Because like I said, nostalgia is a heck of a thing. This was my first Zelda game. The first game that showed me what adventure truly looked like. The first game that threw me headfirst into a world that I wanted to get engrossed in from the moment I turned the power switch. This island and every single one of its inhabitants are precious to me. I've spent so much time, so much meaningful time with them, that they're like old friends. I know their dreams, their desires, their hopes and wants for the future, which is why it tears me apart when I remember what this game's biggest plot twist is. I'm sorry if I'm going off the rocker here and you're just tuning me out at this point, but I have no other way to explain it. This is one of my gaming safe spaces, one of the places I go to when I'm feeling especially bummed. Because the island will always be there, the owl will always be there, the kids, the mermaid, and the animals will always be there. And especially because Marin will always be there. There hasn't been a game character since Link's Awakening that got me to genuinely love them like Marin did. The relationship between her and Link felt so natural, so wonderful, that when I beat the game without dying for the first time and saw that she got her wish, I bawled like a baby. Still getting a little choked up just thinking about it. I mean, what else is there to say? Link's Awakening just means the world to me, which makes me sad that its existence is rarely ever acknowledged. I wish Nintendo would show this game more love, that there was someone out there who saw in it what I see, that the characters would show up again and just one more thing, one thing that would show And that, as they say, is that. Thank you so much to everybody who was patient with me while waiting for this video, but if you're new here, consider checking out my other content like the top 8 clowns in video games, or my discussion series Fnu's Forum, where I recently dropped my thoughts, impressions, and concerns about virtual reality. And you know the drill from here on out. Twitter, Facebook, Patreon, I has them, and by clicking those annotations, you can too! And if you like what you see, please consider subscribing so you can catch a countdown just like this one every single week. Until then, I'm Whatthefnu. Later, everybody!